In the tradition of Malcolm X, peace be unto you. If you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, you probably remember that when he was in prison, one of the techniques that he employed to increase his vocabulary and his reading skills and his grammar was to read the dictionary from the letter A to the letter Z, every word. And I'm quite sure that he memorized thousands and thousands of words. The reason he was able to do that is because he had a printed book of the dictionary in his hand or hands. There's history to that. Why was he able to do that? Because there was a printing press someplace. The first movable type printing press in Europe was invented by Johannes Gutenberg in 1450. So the fact that Brother Malcolm X had that printed copy of a dictionary in his hand dates back in the Western world to 1450. It is commonly called the Gutenberg Press. At the time, it was as revolutionary a piece of technology as the computer and the internet is today. Now, running parallel to the invention of that first printing press and to the dictionary that Brother Malcolm X held in his hand, there exists a hierarchy of immorality. Let me repeat that, a hierarchy of immorality. If you want to get a real precise understanding of the hierarchy of immorality, then get the book called or entitled The Power Elite by C. Wright Mills, chapter 15. Read that. You can download the chapter on the internet. See, again, a revolutionary piece of technology that puts the printed word in your hand. Chapter 15 is entitled The Hierarchy of Immorality. The people that participate the hierarchy of immorality are immoral by virtue of conforming to the design of the hierarchy. Among many characteristics, they will do anything to preserve their status, to get promotions within that hierarchy by becoming more immoral, by achieving or maintaining their status, class, wealth, and their power over others. And power in the political sense is the capacity to get others to do work for you. The higher up the hierarchy of immorality one goes, the more immoral they must become. And if they achieve the highest echelon of that hierarchy of immorality, they are but empty shells. They have proverbially lost their souls. They have given over their souls for what they perceive to be the values of this world. You remember the saying, what profiteth a man or woman if they gain the whole world but lose their soul? So you're dealing with soulless people. They're empty. And we can see that oftentimes reflected by them when they speak and they lie. They are duplicitous. That comes with the turf of participating in the hierarchy of immorality. And of course, they sell out for money, for more status, for more prestige, etc. They are generally called, again, the power elite, or the 1%, who own and control 30 to 31% of U.S. wealth. Now, you have to understand something. As they ascend the hierarchy of immorality, they increasingly go insane. They are mad. They are like people who are gambling and continually lose, but they're not really playing to win. They're playing for the adrenaline rush. They're addicted. They're addicts. And they're no different than many other addicts, alcoholics, crack addicts, heroin addicts. They do it for the rush. It's the big game. They call it the big game. They relish in it. They really, really think somehow in their deluded mind state, their names are going to live forever. They are totally deluded people, but they have no soul, so they are not spiritually at all. But they will front it. They'll pretend. They're good at that. They are like actors on stage. And that they call the political art. The ruling classes like them have existed in every historical period for the last 6,000 years. It's a big show. It's drama. And they learn to act. The only people, according to C. Wright Mills in his book, who they will stand behind to cover them are the celebrities, such as those that used to be churned out in Hollywood or sports. They will stand behind them so that they are not the focus of attention because they work better in the shadows. Now, the power elite consists of monarchs, aristocrats, feudal lords, government administrators, petty bourgeois, religious institutions, the military. And those institutions at that time feared this new invention, this printing press. For centuries, they had cultivated public ignorance and the art of killing as two of the necessary pillars for them to sustain their power. But that didn't stop philosophers, writers, what we might call today journalists, from publishing their thoughts. And we can see the same fight going on today as governments intimidate, repress, and murder journalists or try to suppress free thinkers who speak truth to power. And of course, two great examples, actually three, are Medgar Evers, Dr. Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X. And of course, they do everything with the press that participates the hierarchy of immorality. They do everything to slander their names, and knowing that they cannot attack the truth that they speak, they attack the person. And that is called ad hominems. And that is always a fallacious kind of thing to do because they're skirting the issue of their corruption and their abuse of powers. Now today, history is repeating itself loudly. If you can't see this, you're just not paying attention, or you're part of the hierarchy of immorality. And you can be at the bottom strata of the hierarchy of immorality. You don't have to be at the middle or the top. And you can just simply vote for people who promise to execute immoral policies that fit your worldview, like racism. Now, the new press is electronic. We all know that. You probably have a cell phone or a computer, and you can surf the international World Wide Web. The power elite are doing everything they can to suppress it by buying platforms like YouTube influencers. There's hundreds of millions of dollars being channeled to people on YouTube doing their shows, but in a benign way, they are promoting propaganda. They're lying, or they're telling half truths. And they are religious, they are political, they are opinionated, and they're gossipy. But the point is to distract people who are searching for people who speak truth to power. Television stations, whole television stations are bought so that the elite can control them and control the printed word. Again, the printed word. So we're talking about newspapers and even gossip columns, gossip platforms, because they know this. The real war is the war for the minds of the people, because they need to manipulate you. Because if the power is based upon their capacity to get you do work for them per unit of time, they've got to win you over. They want you to choose them. They want to have persuasive arguments, rhetorical arguments aimed at you so that you will join their militaries and literally put your life at risk, die, such as the 50,000 soldiers who died in Vietnam for absolutely nothing. Nothing. And if it is true, and some people believe this is the only life you get, what a stupid, foolish thing to do is to put your life at jeopardy, the only one that you're going to have in the natural world, for these nasty, evil people. What examples can we reference to understand that to them, dull, uncritical minds are controllable? Well, the institution of slavery comes to my mind. It's the easiest example, because they couldn't quite play it off with the indigenous people. They fought and fought and fought bravely. But the institution of slavery in the United States is a good example of the use of ignorance to control a population and to exploit it. And you can see why ignorance was necessary, a pillar of that institution. Reading or teaching a slave to read was criminalized and punishable. They would punish white people, and they would punish any black person who taught him or herself to read. Because you can teach yourself to read if you can just get someone to sound out the syllables. Now, why? Again, it was because the institution of slavery was designed so that slaves would never, ever get educated into the subjects of science and grammar. You got to learn the language, you got to learn grammar, and you got to learn logic. And then you learn the sciences after you learn arithmetic and some higher level of math. That's the way it goes. Thus, reading or teaching a slave to read was criminalized and punishable. So what did slaves get? They got crackpot preachers put in front of them. And that runs parallel to the problem we have today. We have crackpot politicians. We have crackpot religious leaders who make up mythologies and teach total garbage. And the evidence of the ignorance is the thousands of people who accept it, who believe it. Now, the institution has shown great durability over the course of 250 years, that institution of slavery. And insofar as it has continued to achieve its goal of not educating or miseducating descendants of slavery, it has achieved its purpose. No one could debate the fact that African Americans and other minorities are lost in ignorance and false belief, which is ignorance. But the institution today extends far beyond the descendants of slavery. It encompasses the whole population of the United States. How do we know that? Half the nation, over half the nation, or half the voters in the last presidential election voted for Donald Trump, a crackpot, wealthy businessman who didn't pull himself up by the bootstraps. His father gave him millions of dollars. He didn't join the military. He didn't go into the draft. A crackpot. That's what he is. And that's what you hear whenever he stands in front of the public running crackpot lines, but to gullible people because they are ignorant. Now, culture, let's talk about culture. Culture is the collective act of doing values. What people do is a mirror of their values, what they hold to be of importance to them individually and collectively. That it's a simple definition. It's absolutely objective. What I do is a value, obviously, because I'm doing it. What I avoid doing is obviously not a value. You don't need an abstract definition to understand what culture is. And either your culture has survival value and you can see people doing that, or it doesn't. And they're failing. They're falling apart. They're dying of for unnecessary reasons. They're living reckless lives. That list is evidence of people who have a culture that is what we say in sociology, dysfunctional. Now, one characteristic of the slave institution's durability is that slaves themselves have formed cultures and subcultures that benignly, that means indirectly, promote ignorance or a disdain for reading. Remember, Malcolm read the dictionary from the letter A to the letter Z. Malcolm had not been working his intellect as he hustled out in the streets. I mean, he was a hustler, he was a con artist, he was a pimp, and he wasn't sharpening his intellect for the work that he would ultimately do. But he got motivated, and he got inspired, and he started growing intellectually. But here we have a situation that is evidenced by the Department of Education statistics. The National Assessment of Educational Progress reported that among low-income students, and you know who most of them are, African American children, Latino children, and I quote, "The situation is particularly dire for low-income students, where nearly 70% of fourth graders failed to reach basic reading proficiency." So kids are dropping out of school at the middle school level or high school level, or they're graduating and they can't read proficiently. That means they lack the comprehension probably to read the directions on the back of a can of soup on how to cook it. That's where we're at. And you wonder why the politicians are able to manipulate millions of people through propaganda, through ads that promote lies. Let's make the world safe for democracy. But the reality is they're misleading you. They're misleading you based upon your desire for security, but they're setting up wars in advance. One war after the other. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wars, wars, wars. From the time I was born, America has been at war or in the act of causing a war someplace for monetary reasons. That's how the hierarchy of immorality operates. They don't give a flying duck's quack about your life beyond what you can do for them. Now in California, let me make this quote, only 28% of 8th grade students were proficient in reading. That means 72% are below proficient in reading. End quote. That's failure. That means that, what is happening in the education system? There are methods that could be used that could transform the reading capabilities of most students, but they won't employ them. They will not employ them. There are computer techniques that can raise the reading level of students almost overnight. But they won't do it. Listen, they want them ignorant. Ignorant people fill the prisons. Ignorant people fill the jails. Ignorant people fill the drug rehab centers. And all of those institutions, listen, they are part of the hierarchy of immorality because they're sustained by the hierarchy of immorality because money flows to the rich. Money flows to the rich. Money flows to the military-industrial complex. It flows into Congress. That's the truth. And if you can't handle that, well, that's your problem. What do you think, given all that ignorance and all that exploitation, given the intricacies and the complexities of the hierarchy of immorality, what do you think that portends for the future of these children and adults who cannot read, cannot comprehend, are continually dupes for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party? What? It's over and over and over again. It's like a broken record. Whenever there's an election, they get duped. As Malcolm would say, they get hoodwinked. The truth is, you don't need to look far, because we are in the cumulative effect of all this ignorance and corruption. We are in the cumulative effect. You can see the ignorance on display. The crackpots and the ignorant people are why the United States is getting ready to attack a sovereign nation, Venezuela, why they dropped the mother of all bombs on Iran, why genocide has taken place in Palestine against unarmed people, babies. That's why. And guess what? At the end of the day, because of the Gutenberg press and the fact that books are out there and speakers out there risking their lives to speak truth to power, and you still remain ignorant, you know what? You are getting what you deserve. Your sons and daughters will die in worthless wars. They'll come back traumatized with mental illness for the rest of their lives. They'll be in veterans hospitals, in and out, for the rest of their lives. So don't cry, because this is what you deserve. You are part of the hierarchy of immorality. And that's simply the truth. I am Dr. Stephen Nur Ahmed. Peace be unto you.